Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We have an exciting topic for you today. In the past, we've covered a lot of different parts about Cloud ALM, including how you can connect it up with Jira, Azure DevOps, ServiceNow. Today, we're going to be going outside of project mode and covering more on the operational side for Cloud ALM. So a lot of people are starting to use Cloud ALM. In fact, we hear almost more people using Cloud ALM for the purpose of operations and monitoring than what we would typically see on the project side right now. But people are using it for both, and it is definitely meeting their needs. But on the operations side today, we're going to go a little bit deeper just to talk about how you can get some of those advanced monitoring capabilities. This will integrate into your different SAP applications. We're going to be showing some demonstrations today, talking about how you can get things like process monitoring, business process monitoring. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do first here today at CoreALM, just to give you a bit of a background. We've been in business for about 15 years. The company was started at that time when our CEO and founder left his position as the ALM practice lead at SAP. So many of our team actually previously worked at SAP. That's where we gained a lot of the knowledge and the customer contacts. And you know, what happened back at that time is our founder really surveyed the landscape. Being in his position as the lead for the ALM practice, noticed that there wasn't really another service provider out there outside of just SAP themselves. It was the dedicated focus on application lifecycle management processes, specifically for SAP customers, and decided to found CoreALM to do exactly that. So since that time, have been serving customers with services, but it was about 2018 when we saw an opportunity to actually, many of the people that are using SAP run SAP as a core application, but then of course have other applications in their landscape. And for those other applications, they use different tools. Those tools could be Jira, Azure DevOps, ServiceNow. And these are like enterprise-wide tools that basically give you similar functionality to what you would see in application lifecycle management tools from SAP, such as Solution Manager, now Cloud ALM. And they had a lot of overlapping capabilities. And many of the customers that we spoke to at that time were trying to figure out how they could put those processes together so they could have one seamless process across all of their SAP and non-SAP applications for projects as well as for operations. And that's where we started building software. And at this stage, our goal and our mission is really to unify all application lifecycle management processes for SAP customers across SAP and non-SAP. And that gives you the opportunity to basically have one continuous process that is unified across the platform. In terms of our customers, we've been installed in some very large customers that have very stringent requirements, as well as maybe validated processes where there's a lot of scrutiny, large volumes. No concerns there, and many of our customers have been running on this platform for many years now, and they're very satisfied with the ongoing support that they're getting. In terms of what we cover, we call the application lifecycle management is obviously a continuous process, and so we call it a holistic view that we provide. What we see is that the customers that get the most value from application lifecycle management tools really have an integrated process from end to end. It starts with planning, maybe even process design as your business, is starting to evolve. If you want to do a business transformation, a lot of people start doing that using analysis from Signavio or best practices, and actually, thinking about what is the way that they want to reshape their organization to take advantage of standard capabilities out of SAP, as well as to, basically provide their kind of specific solution that's going to meet their customers' needs. All the way through the building and the planning and implementation of that work, testing it and validating it, and then all the change management side and the ongoing support. And so because that's a very connected process, obviously, when you set out to do your business transformation, you should have certain goals. When you get to the end and you're doing your operations, you want to make sure that you're actually achieving those goals. And so it's a really continuous cycle that's important. This is going to become more and more important, especially as AI tools start to emerge. You want to make sure that you're aligned with platforms that are investing a lot in AI. Of course, that includes ServiceNow, that includes SAP, massive investments on AI. And AI feeds on data. So the better your data is, and the better your AI is going to be able to assist you through that process. Clean data means a happy artificial intelligence platform, and you'll get more and more benefits. So that's what we're seeing. Of course, that's not an easy job, because today, if you're using Solution Manager or if you're using Cloud ALM, there are a lot of overlaps between those tools. Sometimes gaps. Solution Manager is very mature, but Cloud ALM, the new replacement for Solution Manager, has gaps at this stage that may not cover all of your needs. Plus, they overlap very much with those other tools that you probably use across your enterprise, whether it's Jira, Azure DevOps, ServiceNow, and then other tools like Signavio I mentioned, and Tricentis for test automation or change impact analysis. Building that cohesive picture is more and more challenging as time goes on. And so we provide a unification layer, and that unification layer is designed to centralize data access, eliminating decentralized access, data inconsistencies, duplication of effort, and a lack of ability to automate. So we bring in some tools that allow you to directly connect those applications with your SAP platform. So you get the best tools from SAP, but you get one continuous process that is consistent and unified across SAP and non-SAP, using those that application layer that you use for your enterprise, whether it's Jira, Azure DevOps, ServiceNow. Today, we're going to focus just on the Cloud ALM part of operations, but it's important to note that we do provide, whether it's change management you want to do, project management, or operations and alerting, we provide tools to support that level of integration. So here's a quick summary of the different tools that we provide. And with that, I'm going to introduce our guest for today, who's going to walk us through the capabilities within Cloud ALM, and that is Valdrin Spihii. Valdrin, welcome. Valdrin is a application lifecycle management architect here for SAP, and we're excited to have him here today.
Thank you very much, Steve. Can you confirm you can hear me okay?
Yes, perfect. Loud and clear.
Okay, great. Again, my name is Valdrin Spihii, one of the SAP Solution Manager and Cloud ALM architects here with CoreALM. And in today's session, we're going to go through a couple of slides where we'll do a quick introduction to SAP Cloud ALM, and then we'll go into Cloud ALM for operations as well. So to begin with, if you're unfamiliar with SAP Cloud ALM, so this is pretty much a brand new tool from SAP, which is a replacement for SAP Solution Manager. And the goal is really to support applications in cloud and also private cloud as well. So it pretty much covers all of your different SAP and non-SAP solutions from an application lifecycle management. Now, from a capabilities perspective, this is it can also support your implementation and operations. In today's session, our goal is really to focus on the operation side, but to pretty much touch base on the capabilities from an implementation. It's primarily to support any of your project, any of your maintenance work. So, for example, anything from build to design, also to test and to integrate into different areas as well. Now, on the operations side, primarily this is where it's does different types of problem detections and also alerts and etc., which we'll go through into detail today as far as what you can utilize as what are some of the capabilities for you to be able to report on. Now, from introduction into the operation side, the tool is primarily a powerful monitoring into different types of scenarios. So, for example, which some of those that we will talk about is going to be around primarily business process monitoring, health monitoring, integration monitoring, and etc. In addition to that, it's not just necessarily going to monitor your application and business processes, but also you'll have different types of analytics that are pretty much out of the box. So think of them as KPIs in order for you to be able to monitor those different applications. So, and then in addition to that, you could change those different metrics, for example. Therefore, so you could get true alerts directly into SAP Cloud ALM. Now, in addition to that, there's also going to be event and alert management. So at any given time, when there's, for example, a problem with a specific API, you'll automatically get an alert depending on what tool you're using, or if you would just like to use SAP Cloud ALM in order for you to be able to resolve that problem and either fix that alert, for example, and close it, or send it to a third-party tool, which we'll talk about as well. And the last but not least is also automation. Think of this as a proactive solution, where, for example, at any given time, when there's an issue, it's something that you could automate, for example, that a repeating text or a repeating alert can automatically be closed rather than for you to initially close that. So you could have some type of automation, think of it, that could fix a problem without you having to get involved and fix those issues as well. Now, from a SAP Cloud ALM for operations, we'd like to think of this into really three different items, which is going to be the detection, routing, and resolution. Some of the main areas from an inbound integration perspective, think of it that you'll have, depending on what applications you're using, such as if it's, for example, an S4, an integration suite, or even non-SAP applications, you'll have different metrics or configuration items, log entries, events, or alerts that could automatically be inbound integrations into SAP Cloud ALM. Now, from the capabilities perspective, this is where, for example, the Cloud ALM will have different types of capabilities, such as business process monitoring, where you could automatically monitor your business processes, and we'll talk a little bit more about those. Also, integration and exception monitoring, synthetic and real user monitoring, job and automation monitoring, configuration and security, and also health monitoring. So depending on which one of these capabilities you utilize, you'll have different types of metrics that will come into the system. And then once you enable them, the last piece would be, for example, how do we resolve those issues or those alerts? Now, there's going to be different types of ways. For example, one of the main areas is going to be around alert management. So this is pretty much a basic setup. So once you have some type of KPIs, for example, that surpasses, it can automatically create an alert, and then you can decide what do you do with that alert. So then in that case, you'll have some notification management, which you can decide if you want to send emails, chats, tickets, or, for example, create, let's say, a ticket in ServiceNow or a different type of tool directly using the API, the external API management from Cloud ALM. So it's really robust, meaning that, for example, at any given time, when you do have any type of alert that is raised, you could decide what you would like to do with that, including, for example, just sending an email to a user that something has failed, for example. And then last but not least, obviously, you can have some operations flows or operation automation that I mentioned, which is, for example, for you to be able to resolve some of these issues without having to be involved as well. Now, one of the main areas, or one of the first ones that we're going to talk about, is going to be primarily around business process monitoring. This is where SAP does provide different types of KPIs that you could automatically enabled within SAP Cloud ALM. The goal is really to provide a end-to-end monitoring for any business processes in either, for example, in your S4 or any type of other cloud environment, for example. These are pre-canned KPIs that, for example, you could automatically enable. One of them an example could be at any given time, for example, let's say if you don't have any POs created in the system or something like that, where, for example, maybe there's a failure and you're unable to move any type of business transactions. In this case, those are some of the KPIs that you could enable, for example, and then it would raise an alert automatically within your system. And then just from a view perspective, these are going to be some of the 3 or 4 areas I would look at today, for example, like for, let's say, lead to cash. So you could look at, for example, if you have any type of leads created, any type of opportunities created within that day or within the 24-hour period as well, for example. Now, as well, as you go through these different processes, you'll also have, for example, your order to cash to see if you have any type of open sales documents, and you could even configure these, for example, if you have open sales documents for a longer period of time, and you should have them closed within, let's say, a 24-hour period or something in that nature. All of these are completely configurable, meaning that even after you do enable them, you should be able to change the specific metrics. So therefore, the alerts that you do get within the environment are going to be true alerts that you could respond with and fix those issues ahead of time. Now, the next one is going to be around job monitoring. So regardless of which type of environment you have, it's, for example, if it's a cloud S4, if it's something on-prem, within job monitoring, this is, for example, you could push all of your jobs within to SAP Cloud ALM, and then you could monitor their statuses, their application statuses, for example, if there's some type of application that fails. Also, you could go as detailed as to monitor the delay and the response time for each one of the job and the tasks. So, for example, if there's a delay for the jobs to start, maybe the system is overloaded. This is, for example, where you would get an alert right away that a job is delayed, let's say by 30 minutes or so, and it's unable to run, and that could cause further issues as well. In addition to that, it will provide details about the job and the execution. So it's not necessarily just to go into the environment and view the job, but it also will give you some details in regards, for example, why it failed and etc., without you having to navigate into the environment as well. Now, again, we talked a little bit about the embedded alerting. So obviously, at any given time, if there is a failure, any type of delays, all of these can automatically send a alert into depending into what tool you would like to use, if it's email, etc., or just within Cloud ALM as well. And last but not least, any type of analytics. So as you go over time, you'll always have this historical data, especially for jobs when, for example, something fails over time multiple or many times. You're able to tell, for example, if there's a specific day or a specific weekend, for example, that maybe the system is overloaded and those jobs keep delaying and failing as well. So it'll give you a pretty good historical data and trends based on the failures or delays and etc. And then just from a view perspective, for example, you can view these jobs on a single system, meaning that, for example, you want to focus just on a, let's say, S4 ABAP system or on a specific environment and client. Or, for example, you could view something like this, where you're able to view all of the jobs that have different statuses that you're capturing for that environment as well. So it'll give you all of the details, for example, including the job names, the type of job that it is, execution, the application start, runtime, and etc. And this is where we'll also, when we'll go into the demo, you can go into more detail and review these jobs further as well. Now, the next one is really a bit more on the advanced side, which is really the real user monitoring. This is where, for example, you could monitor different types of application based on users, for example. And really the goal is here that instead of having a user report an issue, the goal is to determine and monitor and identify an issue before a user responds. And this could be based, for example, either on performance by a user, for example, or just users not being able to access an application. And the end user monitoring really does a front end server, a front end and a server to identify the actual root cause, for example. So it could be anything such as, network. It could be any type of issues that specific user is unable to reach it as well. So really the goal is for you to provide these specific, think of them as agents in different areas, such as a browser, or if you have any type of cloud service where it's constantly pinging and recording that performance or that network. So therefore, for example, if let's say network, if it's like a RFC or something in that nature, and the user is not able to reach that application, you'll get an alert way ahead in advance before the user even reports that issue. Therefore, for example, you can fix the issue ahead of time rather than wait until it's reported. And again, it does support different types of applications. So, right, it could be any type of cloud, or it could be just a browser or a mobile device, including, for example, as I mentioned, like on-prem systems as well. Now, here's an example of a couple of screenshots, the way the end user monitoring will look. So you'll have different types of applications. Let's say an example is here from a BTP application. So you'll have different type of HTTPS, for example, apps that the user is trying to reach, or specific, for example, RFCs, or including, for example, if you have any type of on-prem or S/4HANA cloud environments as well. And then as you go detailed into each one of the environments, then you'll be able to see the actual request name, for example, and the execution for that specific request. And it will also give you some further details as well, which it will primarily navigate through what the user is actually what the user is actually going through, including, for example, all the way to the backend database, where they're trying to access, and which one of these took the longest in order for the response or the request to come back, and where is that actual delay, for example, if it's at the front end or if it's somewhere in the back end. So therefore, you can determine the issue a lot sooner, and it will give you that almost that root cause that you could look into without actually having to troubleshoot the issue. Now, the next one is the integration and exception monitoring. This is also more of on the advanced side. This is primarily, for example, to monitor any type of interfaces. Think of them, for example, regardless of the type of application. So think of if you have something on cloud and on-prem, especially between the integration suite and your S4 environments. And then if you want to have an end-to-end integration of your interfaces, regardless, for example, of their iDocs, or if you're making any type of RFC integrations. This is where you could monitor a specific iDoc, let's say from source to target, for example, or vice versa. So therefore, if there's any failures, any type of, think of it, any type of codes that the iDoc fails with, you could automatically get an alert for any of those type of integrations. Now, it's not necessarily just for iDocs. You could monitor a lot more of these interfaces. It does not necessarily have to be just between the SAP integration suite and S4, but it could be anything such as if you have S4HANA Cloud, SuccessFactors, and there's also a list of applications that are supported by SAP that you are able to monitor the services and systems for any type of messages, flows that go through between these environments. And then just to give you an idea from an end-to-end monitoring, what these messages look like. So think of, for example, if you have a message that flows from field glass from a vendor into your integration suite, and then at some point it reaches your S/4HANA environment. So you could pretty much monitor that message from the initiation of it all the way to the S4, and then it also if it responds back with any type of information. And this is one basic flow, but however, if you have more complex flows, including your non-SAP applications, for example, you could have very similar monitoring of if any of type of messages and that you want to report on. And really the goal would be, for example, those critical ones. SAP does provide within Cloud ALM some out-of-the-box messages, for example, that you could automatically turn on within a specific environment. Let's say if you want to just understand those messages in S4, if anything is failing that it's reaching or it's going outbound from S4, you could automatically enable those and get an alert directly within an environment as well. Now the next one is going to be around health monitoring. This is where, for example, you could monitor different applications. Primarily, let's maybe take an example of a on-prem like an S4 environment, and if you want to see how the environment, including all the way to the OS level or just at the application level, this is where you could monitor any such thing as, for example, the memory of the system, also including anything all the way to any type of ABAP, any ABAP short dumps and etc. for example. So think of this more of a technical monitoring rather than functional. The goal is really just to make sure that any type of processes that you're monitoring, any type of short dumps that if you're getting in the system, the goal is to monitor on those items directly within Cloud ALM and then alert for those as well. It does also support some of the cloud services as well. They're not necessarily just on-prem, but again, these are some predefined monitoring within health monitoring in Cloud ALM that you could enable, and then as you go over time, change that configuration for health monitoring. Therefore, you could modify those KPIs at metrics. So therefore, you're alerted on a true issue when at any given time when there's a disruption or a degradation of that system. Now, within health monitoring as well, you'll have different types of metrics, for example, for each one of the environments. It just depends on what you would like to turn on and off. So here's an example. For example, if there's a high level one just that does a system heartbeat just to make sure the system is up and running, or for example, you can go all the way to understanding how many short dumps you have today, or for example, if you have any type of certifications that have failed and etc. Again, all of these are configurable, and these are just some of the items in here. So a very good example is for if you have any type of work processes on hold. Therefore, if you see that you have many, the idea would be to ensure that those processes can be can come back online, for example, or maybe you need to add more processes with that environment. So each one of these metrics in here, again, are completely configurable. And within one, we'll go into the demonstration, we'll go through of how to also configure each one of the items as well. Now, there's also the configuration and security analysis as well. This is an item, for example, within let's take an on-prem system and where you have different types of configuration and also security within your environment. What you can do is once you enable this, you can send all of this information into Cloud ALM. And what that does is it will store all of that information within Cloud ALM. So at any given time, if there's any type of change done to the configuration of the environment, or for example to the security as well. You could also go and look at that historically. For example, think of it as a browser, and to see if there's been any type of changes to your configuration, also to your security as well within that environment. So think of this as it acts as a collection of data, and therefore if you do have any type of configuration issues within your environment that you run at a later time, you can always go back and look at the historical data of those changes. Therefore, you can determine that the reason why you're having any type of issues is because you possibly made a configuration change within your environment as well. So to go into more detail of the configuration and the security analysis, for example, is that once you have this information into Cloud ALM, then at that point, you could take a look at, for example, if anything has changed. So here's a couple of items in here. So if there's any type of global change setting or if there's any type of UI5 version change, these are some of the basic items, but any of it would collect, let's say it's hundreds of metrics in here that you could analyze over time. And if there's any type of change at all in here, it will automatically provide you that information from it changed from this to something else as well. It's also information, for example, that if you need over time, that you could also export this into a sheet, and then so you could have it to determine exactly what you have configured within your environment. And last but not least, which is very important, Cloud ALM does also offer intelligent event processing as well. So for any of these applications in here, besides the security and configuration, at any given time, if there's any alert raised, you could decide what you do with that alert as well. So you could primarily either have it manually trigger any type of events, or you could automatically have these events either, for example, trigger a email, or you could, for example, have something where if you have definitely a third-party tool, a incident tool, you could automatically raise it into an incident tool, and then you could have some type of integration where once you fix that issue, it will automatically close those issues within Cloud ALM, within the intelligent event processing as well. In addition to that, you could also form some rules within the intelligent event processing, for example, so that if you just get one alert, it does not necessarily mean that you need to resolve that issue as well. But let's say, for example, if you get 5 or additional alerts for the same problem, and then maybe only at that point, that's when you decide to raise an issue for that specific alert. So you'll really have some different types of rules that you could set directly in here, and you decide what to do with those alerts once something is raised from any of these applications that you decide to monitor. Okay, in the next step here, we're going to go into a demonstration. And on a couple of the capabilities that we just looked at through the slides in here. So once this opens up, so within SAP Cloud ALM for operations, you'll have these different types of tiles in here in order for you to monitor the environment. You'll also have the management and automation, which we slightly talk about intelligent event processing, notification management, and then also operation management. But from the top section in here, these are the primary areas that you would be working on. And then one of the first ones that we're going to take a look at, which is going to be health monitoring, or if you think of this more of a technical monitoring as well. So you'll have different types of applications. In my case in here, I have a couple of on-prem and the SAP Cloud ALM system that I'm monitoring, but from an SAP S4 perspective, I have 4 different environments that I am monitoring in here. Then once you navigate into the health monitoring, then you can also specify exactly which environment you want to look at as well. So what we'll do today is we'll look at one of my environments in here in S4 that has maybe a couple of alerts in here. But once you navigate to this screen in here, then you'll have all of the different metrics in here that SAP provides that are, let's say, out of the box, for example, that you can enable or disable. And then some of those metrics, for example, are going to be around, let's say, if the system heartbeat, if the system is even up and running, obviously this is green. But then you'll also have, for example, the work processes that are on hold, how many are stopped, and then how many are in usage as well. You'll also get dialogue steps. So I'm not necessarily going to go through each one of them, but some of the critical ones, for example, for me are, let's say, the response time of the system, and then maybe how many short dumps, and then if I have any certificates that are in error as well. Some of these, for example, such as ABAP version, STPI version, or for example HANA version, some of these that you could also almost think of as a free text that you could enter what you would like the response to be, and then if it's not the response, it would automatically raise an alert as well. But if you scroll down, for example, it's also gonna check your ICM services, your gateway services, your ABAP resources, for example, as well. So anything from extended memory to RFC ping time and etc. It's also going to check some of the bad jobs. So this is not some of the job monitoring, but it's also going to check if your bad jobs are running or not, for example. So as you navigate down, you're going to have including some of the operating system metrics as well, such as CPU, host memory, including if you have any type of heap memory without cache, for example, as well. Now, I'm going to scroll down to the top section in here, but let's say, for example, if you just short dumps, in my case, I'm already getting a warning if I just have a short dump for today for one. But for example, let's say in your environment, it's something that you get more than one short dump a day, and it's not a actual true metric. So it's fairly easy for you to be able to change this type of metrics, for example. So at any given time, as long as you have authorizations, you could go in here, then you could decide to change, for example, maybe from one, we'll change this to like 2 short dumps, or maybe as long as I get more than 5, only at that point, this is something that's critical for me. So you can decide to do a warning and critical and then save it. And then at that point, this will, the next given time, when it collects the data, which is going to be within the next 5 or 10 minutes, it will automatically go away because now we changed the configuration. So it's really fairly easy for you to be able to change the configuration. Now you'll also have this as a different view as well. You could check them in a list view, but all of this information in here, it's almost out of the box that you could start utilizing Cloud ALM for. The next one in here is going to be around alerting. So it's specific to health monitoring, for example. If there's any type of alerts that were raised, I think we've just looked at, for example, high number of short dumps. And then once you go in here, it's going to tell you, for example, how many of those short dumps were created over time. As you can see, some of these short dumps in some of my different environments, I've had many more than just one. And then you can decide what you do with those alerts. There's a couple of different options. You could decide to confirm it, add comments. You could also assign this to a processes, for example, to one of your basis team members to work on, send an email notification, or start an operational workflow as well. Now, the couple of items here at the bottom, you could create a ticket. So you could, for example, have a third-party tool where we could automatically, from here, we could create a ticket. So an example is one of my environments that I have integrated in here with, it's going to be a ServiceNow ticket. So for example, once you select it, and then I click OK, it will automatically create a ticket into my ServiceNow system. So therefore, for example, within that ServiceNow ticket, they'll have, so if I go back to the screen again, they'll have, for example, a link back into SAP Cloud ALM where they could review this information and they could decide if they want to close it or not. And again, you don't necessarily, these alerts, as I mentioned, within the intelligence processing, you could automatically raise these into a third-party tool. You don't have to do this manually, but this is just from a demo perspective. Now, in addition to that, from an alerts perspective, so if you want to see the history for this, or if you want to kind of see more of a analytical view, you can navigate in here, then you could change a time to maybe even an earlier time in here to see how many alerts you had over time. So this was just one alert, but if you go to, for example, if you get an alert, multiple times, like 33, you want to see how many you got over time, you could look at this historical data and determine how many alerts you got per day within this area. So that's from an alerting perspective and health monitoring. Now, the next one is we'll go into job and automation monitoring. And then once this opens up, then it's going to be very similar to health monitoring. Rather, this is more just focused on job monitoring. So you'll have different types of environments that you're monitoring, but here on the left-hand side, obviously I have some problems in here with some of the jobs that I'm monitoring so far. So it looks like at least 16 jobs I'm having some type of issues. Once you navigate into the job monitoring area, then it'll give you the name of the job, the type of job that it is, what is the execution status, what is the application status, if there's a delay, if there's a runtime, and then which environment, for example, as well, and then if there's any open alerts. So in my case, I'm not creating any alerts for any of the jobs, but it'll give you all of that information. What's very important, for example, if there's a failure, we'll take a look at this one directly in here. If you go into any of these jobs, then it's going to give you some additional information for that specific job as well, and what is the issue. So you can navigate all the way down to seeing the exact issues, for example, and then you'll understand when this job was started to execute, and then what was the end time for it, and then you'll also have, for example, the execution status and the application status for each one of them. Now, again, if you go back to the main screen in here again, you'll have this also all of the other jobs that you're monitoring, and then you can decide which exact jobs you want to raise alerts for example. You don't necessarily have to monitor. Maybe you just want to have alerts for some of the critical jobs. In this case, this is going to bring back almost every single job that is running within the environment. But from an alert perspective, you can decide which one of the jobs you actually want to raise alerts for. So, and in addition to that, similar to the health monitoring, you could also have some type of analysis done on each one of the jobs. Let me just select one very quickly in here. So if you want to have any type of analysis done, for example, on any of the jobs, that's also possible as well. So the total execution, the real-time execution, and then, for example, if there's the runtime, and also if there's any application status failures as well for any of these jobs. So you'll pretty much, if you navigate to some of these in here, you can get a true analysis of each one of the jobs. So think of this, for example, instead of having to navigate to the environment and kind of seeing the historical data in SM37, you could navigate directly to this analysis within the job monitoring. And then from this perspective, you could see kind of like a trend, if there is any type of failures, if at any given time, if there was a delay to start, and etc. If there's a failure, such as if it was green or red over time in here, for example. And then also if there's any type of red execution, so meaning that if there's any type of failed status of a job, and then also the amount of time that job was also running. So for each one of the jobs, you can have all of those different types of information directly within Cloud ALM, because you are pushing this information, let's say, almost every 5 minutes in my example. Therefore, you'll have that historical data in here for as long as you decide to keep those metrics within Cloud ALM. Okay, now the next area that we're going to go to is going to be around business process monitoring. And this is more functional in nature, not necessarily job or technical monitoring. This is where you could have different types of KPIs for your business processes that are running within the environment. And again, completely customizable from a KPI perspective. So SAP does provide the monitoring areas. You just have to modify the KPIs to determine, for example, let's say if you want to alert based on how many POs are created in a day, or if there's no POs created within a day. This is where, for example, you could modify those type of metrics, so therefore you get the true alerts. So we'll just give it a second for this to open up. And then one of the areas that we'll look at, which is enabled within our environment, is going to be around source to pay. And this should come up any second. It's just taking longer than expected. And then again, from a business process monitoring perspective, you'll have different types of KPIs. So an example is here's the amount of purchase requisitions that are created, or for example the invoices that are blocked for payment. So in any of these, think of it, any of these metrics that we have in here, such as supplier invoices created and etc. All of these items, you could create different types of alerts for them. Therefore, you can report on them. So more on the business or functional oriented rather than anything to do with technical. But you could definitely, before you have any type of issues, for example, within a certain amount of time, you could automatically report. An example is, let's say if you have no purchase requisition created, let's say for a week or so, it could be that you may have some type of issue, and you'll identify that rather earlier than before users start reporting that they're unable to let's say, create a purchase requisition. And also, just from a metric perspective, you could have all of this information in here based on the capabilities that you're using within your environment. You could report directly information in here as well. And again, from an alert perspective, it's not much different than what I've showed you. I don't have any alerts in here, but if you had any alerts based on those KPIs that you have set up, all of those alerts would be in here, and you could decide to whom you want to send those alerts as well. Okay, and the next area that we're going to take a look at is going to be around real user monitoring. And this is an application, for example, that you set up to determine if there's any type of network issue for an actual user, let's say from an application. So we'll give this just a second to open up.
While we're waiting for this, just let us know if you have any questions. You can put those into the chat or the Q&A, and we'll get to those quickly.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, feel free to add those into the Q&A. And I apologize, this is actually taking longer than expected. It's usually much quicker, but I think it's probably related to my network here.
No problem. We do have a couple of questions already queued up. Maybe I could ask those while this is loading, and we can start there. Okay, first question was, is it the same job? Let's say you have a job that failed multiple times. Do you only get one alert, or do you get multiple alerts for each of those failures?
So the alerting is just dependent the way it's configured. For example, if you decide that you just set up alerting it will, every time there's a failure, it will automatically create an alert for each one of those. Now, you could and the reason why I say that, because you could use uh, uh, the process intelligence, which, for example, you could decide that you don't necessarily want to have an alert created every single time there's a failure, especially if there's a job that runs every 10 minutes, for example. So you want to bundle those together and then possibly just create one alert. But if it keeps happening, it's not going to raise an alert to a end user or to, let's say, a third-party tool to create multiple tickets for the same issue.
Okay, perfect. Looks like your screen is loaded now, so
yeah, the base setup would create an alert for every single one of them. Okay, so unfortunately this took longer than expected, but from a real user monitoring, there's different type of requests that you could monitor, and here's, for example, some of the requests that we're monitoring within our environment in here. And as I scroll down, you kind of see the how many executions you have in here, and then what is the average response time. But just to give you an idea, once you navigate into kind of like seeing the information in here, and then I'll navigate a little bit further, then you'll kind of have, based on every single time that this specific service ran, let's say, for example, then you'll have an idea at what point it failed, and then what was that response time for each one of this. So this is just a very basic monitoring from a user perspective. But imagine that you have a user that's trying to reach an application from a browser, let's say from a specific location. And the goal would be for you to monitor that location, let's say every hour, maybe at least once a day. So, for example, if that response time takes, let's say, this many seconds or minutes, therefore you're able to get an alert before the user says that they have an issue with something open or taking a long time to open. But that's really the idea behind the real user monitoring. You'll have different types of metrics and services that you can monitor from a end user perspective.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, definitely. The whole point of doing these business transformation projects is so that you can get to the place where you are actually running and live. But of course, none of that is any good if the system's not responding. So putting these alerts in place is really a best practice. And more you have this data available, the more that you can do your process analytics, and that will feed some mining capabilities potentially for the next round of business transformation. So you're on this continuous improvement cycle that I talked about earlier. There are a couple more questions. These get a little bit technical, but I'll give you a chance to answer if you can. And maybe this is that smart response option that you talked about before, but is it possible for the monitoring, the job monitoring, if there's something that runs long, let's say over 5,000, it says seconds here. So it could be that you set a time limit. So if you exceed those thresholds, that's when you generate an alert or an event. Is that possible?
Yeah, so it does monitor the long running job, and also if there's a delay for the job to start. So you could determine that metric, for example, if because every job is different, so you don't necessarily want to have the same configuration for all of them. So and that's why I mentioned you might have hundreds of jobs, maybe only 10 are critical. So the idea would be that for those 10 critical jobs, as an example, you set up different thresholds, such as delayed start. Maybe if it's more than 2-3 minutes, then you raise an alert, or the duration of the job runs more than, like you mentioned, 5,000 seconds or whatever the case may be, then you also raise an alert. So yes, completely configurable
okay,
threshold.
That's nice.
With the set.
And then next question is kind of a follow-on question. So let's say you get to that point where you pass the threshold for wait time. Is it possible then to generate create an automatic process, for example, cancel a job or trigger some other action?
Definitely trigger some other action, not necessarily cancel a job within the environment. So it's not going to take an action within the environment and automate the actual canceling or rerunning that job. But definitely you could some different actions, for example, within the intelligent processing for you to perform.
Okay, so is it possible? So it's possible to create some external trigger. So maybe you could have some program that's notified that would go through and do your job cancellations, but that would take some custom development, I guess. Is that how that would work?
Yeah, maybe you can speculate that that's something
possible.
That you could to trigger some event, let's say, but not necessarily for Cloud ALM action.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so Cloud ALM goes as far as generating that external response, not necessarily taking the actions. Great. A couple other things. Can you set thresholds for a group, let's say, different values for DIA, BTC, UPD? I don't know what all of that means, but I'll ask the question, see if that makes sense to you.
You might have to take that offline. I definitely need some, unless there's more information in the chat.
Okay, if this is a question that you asked, certainly feel free to put more details, but we'd be happy to take that offline with you. I'll give you some information on how you can contact us. You can use info@corealm.com, or you can go to our website, click on talk to an expert. I'll cover that in just a minute. Can you create alerts on the real user monitoring as well?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Yes, and each one of these we showed you can have alerts, notifications, and etc.
Okay, and I think those are the questions that we have received so far. I'm just checking all my sources. Yeah, it looks like that covers it. So definitely shared a lot of information today. I have one more question just from me because I talked earlier about those integrations. I believe we have alert integrations. Maybe you can speak about that briefly.
In regards to?
So Cloud ALM alert integrations with, let's say, Jira, ServiceNow, those types of applications.
Sure. So we do have an integration, an application or that you could, for example, any type of alerts that are raised currently within Cloud ALM, an alert can be raised and sent to like a ServiceNow tool and etc. However, if that issue is closed, then at that point, that would be something that you have to build from scratch to respond back into Cloud ALM. Our integration points with such like ServiceNow, for example, it will automatically create a ServiceNow ticket. And then this, depending on the workflow that you build, once you build a respond back into that ServiceNow ticket and you close it, it will automatically also close the alert and the issue within Cloud ALM directly. So that's something that it's out of the box that we have built that you could deploy within your Cloud ALM and ServiceNow. Okay,
great. Thank you. And one more question that snuck in under the wire. Can you monitor your own business process? I believe that the business process monitoring is canned, excuse me, out of the box. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, so SAP has certain KPIs that they have pre-built within Cloud ALM. However, those KPIs, new KPIs are introduced, let's say, almost every quarter for you. So, and if there's some certain ones that are not there already, you can absolutely raise a feature request for Cloud ALM to add that. But they're adding those quarterly, and I would say at this point it's pretty robust already.
And I think that SAP does also provide open integration with open telemetry. So any way you can raise alert through open telemetry, you can reflect those KPIs in your alert management dashboards. So I believe they have capabilities there as well. Baldwin, thanks very much for going into this in a little bit more depth. Definitely, this is an exciting new tool from SAP that is web-based, cloud-based, and easy to use. Thank you all for joining us here today. If you have any further questions, the best way to get a hold of us, I mentioned it earlier, you can go onto our website. In the top right corner, there's a Talk to an Expert button. Click on that, fill out the form, and we'll get back in touch with you. And we'd be happy to answer any of your questions that you have. Please stay tuned on your, there's a barcode up on your screen right now. You can go to corealm.com/resources, and you can register for upcoming webinars. You can also go to our blogs page. We have a lot of topics that we kind of introduce. We have a weekly newsletter that goes out that's also posted on LinkedIn. If you subscribe on LinkedIn, you'll automatically get notified for the updates as they become available. If you're watching the recording, thanks very much. If you're joining us live, thanks for staying all the way to the end, and we'll send you a copy of this recording after today's webinar. Again, thank you all for joining. Thank you, Baldwin, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thanks a lot.